Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel on misinformation and media literacy. We're extremely grateful to our very stellar panel that we have here with us. We have Marium Chaudhry, who is the CEO of The Current and has been a journalist with Geo for a number of years. We have Rahim Shamsi, who's the Pakistan editor for Nukta and was previously at the Center of Journalism at IBA. We have Mehr Hussain, who's the editor of Naya, Daur, Friday Times, and is also a published author. And we have Seerat, who's the programs lead at the Digital Rights Foundation and works on countering misinformation and capacity building for us journalists and human rights defenders. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking out the time and being here with us today. Mariam, I'll begin with you. On We've seen how misinformation and this trend on like how the algorithm feeds into like aggregating news that spreads that perhaps resonates with pre-existing news with people, and we that when like the most recent Gaza war where we had this 40 beheaded babies rumor being confirmed by the US president that he had seen it when there was no record of it. We saw that in the recent, again, US elections, where for to build on the anti-immigration policy, Haitian immigrants were like called pet eaters, and there was like nothing to back it by. We've seen in Pakistan how how this thing builds on and capitalizes on people's emotions and leads to a lot of unrest. So, how as a journalist does one balance this need to keep pace up with the digital information age, but also verify facts and so yeah.
I think एक दो चीजें होती हैं. एक चीज होती है मिसइन्फॉर्मेशन और दूसरी चीज होती है फैक्ट. गाजा में इजराइल में beheaded babies is not a fact. That's it's complete, is untrue. But if you are on the Palestinian side, or if you're on the Israeli side, you will pick your information the way that you want, right? You will choose and pick sides based on your opinion and your leaning. Usme misinformation feeds in. It can be true, it can not be true, it can have a little bit of truth, it can have a little bit of falseness. Usme phir variation aa jati hai. But some things are fact and some things are complete fiction. For example, the recent Punjab rape case, usme hamare liye thoda sa mushkil tha, in the sense ke I don't think anybody right now can factually say that it was true or wasn't true, because we have no victim. We don't know who she is. We have no, we have somebody who's been arrested, but he wasn't there. He was there. So there's a lot of misinformation spread in that regard. But the fact is, we cannot confirm that factually did it happen or didn't happen. So I think there's a lot of trouble when things spread rapidly, when you can't control them, when there's a particular point of view that is spreading them, for and against both. And then when you try to, fact check it, you have to have solid information, which is very hard to gather. I don't think that, I think people take their time to fact check as they should. And I don't think that in a digital age, it matters as much as people think it does. You can take a long time in fact check, but if you actually have the data to back it up, people will still, that will still resonate with people. So I don't think isme jitna hum kehte hain ki speed ka farak padta hai, I don't think itna padta hai. As long as you have the information that actually does back it up. So I think it becomes very difficult for people to understand कि जी एक fact क्या है, misinformation क्या है, उनको समझाने के लिए बड़ा time लगता है. But at the end of the day, it depends on what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe. So I think that that's where the problem lies.
Amber, you've just started a digital media, digital news agency, Nukta, and you've been on television before. And like पहले ये होता था कि जो टेलीविजन की जो न्यूज़ है वो डिजिटल जो है वो पिकअप करता था, एंड इस तरह हम बढ़े. अब वह जो डिजिटल स्पेस पे हो रहा है वो टेलीविजन और प्रिंट रिपोर्ट कर रहा होता है. सो in terms of what Mariam said, that people will believe whatever they want to, how do you, as an editor of a news organization, then like make those editorial decisions कि जी हमने अच्छा हमने वो पोलराइज्ड ओपिनियन के साथ नहीं जाना क्योंकि वहां हमें शायद क्लिक्स तो ज्यादा आ सकते हैं लेकिन जर्नलिज्म will just be another online troll account.
Well, that's a great question. I think that's one of the struggles with digital because, as Mariam pointed out, people respond to news and current events in an emotional way, as people are. That's human nature. There's nothing wrong with it. So they will stop at something if it confirms their belief. It'll shock them. It'll make them, upset, or it'll anger them, or anything of that sort. So we kind of recognize, and journalists kind of instinctively know as well, that these are stories that will impact people, affect them. But the problem, obviously, with the digital space, or at least I would say social media, is that there are a lot of bad faith actors out there who do exploit our emotions. And the fact checks that we do, or at least with any credible media or digital organization, the problem, of course, is how much do we pander to that audience? We know that there are a lot of successful digital organizations that do, and they do it, they have millions of views and clicks. And perhaps that's how they generate impact. But it becomes a struggle for organizations that would like to create impact without pandering to the lowest common denominator, to emotions. And I think that is something that we have to try and evolve as well. And I think as an example, so when I was at the Center for Excellence in Journalism, we started with the support of the UNDP, we started a fact-checking cell called I Verify Pakistan, which is, I've left CEJ, but it continues. Now, they would obviously, our team would fact check anything that was current, people were talking about. They would label it properly. They would follow all the sort of fact checking guidelines that you need to do. But it does take time, as Mariam pointed out. And by the time that you fact check or correct it or label it, people have moved on to another story because of in social media and digital space, there is a new story every few hours. There's a new sense of outrage. There's something new to look to, and people's attention spans are really short. And they're instinctive. The first part of their brain that reacts will have moved on. So it becomes a bit of a challenge if you are not competing in the same format or language that the bad faith actors are. And that's something sort of in my experience that I've discovered, that I don't think any, fact checking has become a big deal across the world. There's a lot of funding for it. There's separate entities that do it. Media organizations do it as well. But at the end of the day, it becomes just for the record rather than to convince or persuade someone that this is not wrong. And I'll give you the Punjab alleged case. I mean, in my opinion, I am very convinced that this alleged rape didn't happen, because having investigated stories myself as a reporter, especially allegations of this sort, and especially in such an emotional issue, I would say that there is some clue to who it could potentially be. You can trace it in some way. Somebody is connected in some way. In this particular case, Mariam's current did excellent work on this. We got a reporter to find out as well. And we just couldn't find a trace of this alleged victim, to which I can maybe say with a certain degree of surety that it's most likely it didn't happen. But for headline purposes, most likely isn't good enough. It doesn't get you eyeballs. People want binaries, they want black and white, they want certainty. And I think a week after a lot of good organizations, credible organizations, followed, investigated, covered this story, I went to a Karachi University seminar in which we were talking about peace journalism, of all things. And I used this as an example of how conflict is created through this kind of misinformation, disinformation. And a few of the students were still convinced that there was a massive cover-up when there seems to be very little evidence. And I do think that there is so little care in terms of most independent digital organizations, barring a few that are responsible, that sort of peddle these kinds of stories, that create conflict, that don't verify, that all of those things come in. So the danger obviously is that there is violence, as we saw in this particular case. when nothing could be verified or confirmed. So it is because it's an emotional issue, people will believe it. I mean, going back to sort of your question, the best we can do is obviously try to remain credible, try to fact check as much as possible, investigate. But journalism is not just about curation, which is putting together stories from different stories from other new organizations. True journalism is, I mean, in my opinion, should actually be licensed because it requires a great deal of verification and care. And I think that line has obviously been erased thanks to social media companies. It's been because the algorithm does favor anything that would outrage you, would shock you, would make you upset. And this is why the role of journalists has become much more important. But unfortunately, social media companies have taken on that role of providing information to people. They've replaced journalists and journalism. And I'm afraid that what we have is creating much more conflict and polarization.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with you, Amber. Building on from what Amber said, Mehr, especially the examples that Amber quoted, कि there were a lot of people and इस तरह के एक sensitive issue था, लोग गुस्सा भी है उनमें, अगर आप पाकिस्तान की अगर ना भी लें, आप पोलराइजेशन के ऊपर बात करें, सो अमेरिका में जो रिपब्लिकन्स हैं वो अपने एक एको चैम्बर में हैं और वो उसको फीड इन कर रहा है और उनको लगता है कि दूसरी साइड झूठ बोल रही है और दूसरी साइड को लगता है कि ये झूठ बोल रहे हैं, लाइक ओनली द प्रॉब्लम एम्पलीफाइज व्हेन दोनों साइड्स पे ज्यादा तादाद हो लोगों की। मगर इसमें कुछ ऐसी चीजें भी आ जाती हैं जहां when they pick on these emotions and they actually do more harm than go to the actual causes that misinformation is purportedly trying to rile people up against. So how does one respond to that?
बिल्कुल, बड़ी मेहरबानी रजा। चंद हफ्ते पहले मुझसे किसी ने सवाल पूछा था कि क्या पाकिस्तान में सहाफत पढ़ाने की जरूरत है और क्या पाकिस्तान में और सहाफियों की जरूरत है। तो मुझे इस बात पे बड़ी हैरानगी हुई थी कि ये किस तरह का सवाल था। तो इससे मुझे अंदाजा हुआ, और जब अभी मरियम ने बात की कि सच ढूंढते ढूंढते भी वक्त निकलता है, और जो अंबर बात कर रही हैं कि सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म की वजह से अब हर कोई अपने आप को एक सहाफी कहलाता है, तो मेरे ख्याल में एक अहम सवाल आता है कि मीडिया लिटरेसी की क्या अहमियत है। मीडिया लिटरेसी बनाई गई थी कि आपकी जिंदगी में वैल्यू हो इंफॉर्मेशन की, आपकी जाती जिंदगी में और आपकी प्रोफेशनल जिंदगी में। You need to be aware of the information. Is it adding to you in terms of your knowledge? Is it adding any value to your personal growth? Is it seen as a form of investment personally and of course expanding your skill set professionally? अभी हार्वर्ड बिजनेस रिव्यू की एडिशन में एक आर्टिकल आया हुआ था जहां पे किसी ने लिखा हुआ था कि whoever uses media literacy effectively smokes the others. स्मोक का जो लफ्ज इस्तेमाल हुआ है वो बहुत ही दिलचस्प है, क्योंकि उसपे डबल मीनिंग है कि एक तरफ से अगर जो मीडिया लिटरेसी का सही इस्तेमाल करेगा वो आगे बढ़ जाएगा, यानी लीविंग पीपल बिहाइंड इन द डस्ट, or it can be used to create confusion amongst others. अब बात आ जाती है कि जब आप मीडिया के टूल्स देते हैं या मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म्स देते हैं तो वो किस चीज के लिए इस्तेमाल हो रहे हैं। क्या वो जनरेशन ऑफ आइडियाज हैं? आइडिया से मुराद है कि जी कोई अच्छे ख्यालात आ रहे हैं या कैंपेन शुरू हो रहे हैं या कोई क्रिएटिविटी हो रही है, क्या ये एडिटिंग टेक्स्ट हो रही है। मसलन कि अब हम देखते हैं कि अक्सर लोग लिखते हैं फेसबुक पे हो या ट्विटर पे हो, एक चीज बयान दे के फौरन एडिट कर देते हैं जब देखते हैं कि उनको सही तरह का रिएक्शन नहीं मिल रहा। अब सही तरह का रिएक्शन से क्या मतलब है, वो ये है कि उसमें आपकी जो आपने बात की है उसका क्या वैल्यू है आपकी जिंदगी में। क्या आपके मीडिया टूल्स और प्लेटफॉर्म से आप एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं, क्या आप डेमो डेटा बना रहे हैं। ये भी एक बहुत एक अहम बात आ जाती है, because you see when you are utilizing media tools and platforms, what's the end goal? Now, I've said this before, you can, as a media organization, you can either engage in firefighting or you can continue creating content that is effectively there to communicate information on the basis of fact finding, which again takes time. But I think what Amber pinpointed very correctly was that people just want instant gratification. People just want their likes because the element of monetization. So, Zairi baat hai, when something like money comes in, particularly in a country of like Pakistan, which I don't think can be compared to the US when it comes to the media, because of course there's more money in the US and in Pakistan, the economic crisis has hit people hard over the last 3-4 years. So everybody is looking to make a quick buck. Now, I'm not going to judge these people because they're पेट की पूजा करनी है, बच्चों को खिलाना है, पिलाना है, फी देनी है, बिल्स देने हैं, तो जाहिर बात ही आ जाता है. बात आ जाती है कि जी स्टेट का क्या रोल है इसमें, स्टेट क्या कर रही है. You see, all of these things, you can talk about the media, and I find it really fascinating when people say कि जी मीडिया को ये करना चाहिए, मीडिया को वो करना चाहिए, मीडिया पे ये होना चाहिए, मीडिया पे वो होना चाहिए. भाई आप हमारी जुबान आप बंद कर सकते हैं, लेकिन फिर आप जब इस तरह की चीजें पढ़ते हैं व्हाट्सएप पे, आपका दिल खराब होता है, तो आप फिर क्यों ये कंज्यूम करें. बात आ जाती है कि आपकी जिंदगी में क्या वैल्यू है. इंफॉर्मेशन इज देयर टू इन्फॉर्म and to create better decision making. If that's not happening, then frankly speaking, it does come down to the consumer. As Marium said, that if you continue to believe what you want to believe, and there is still no progress being made in your personal or your professional life, then the responsibility does not lie with the media. Although I do agree with what Amber said, that the media needs to be licensed. Every other person who now, in the name of freedom of expression or freedom of speech, declares themselves as a journalist, all I have to say is we need to look at how they're navigating three things: the hype that they're creating, the risk that they're bringing on, and the uncertainty. Are they addressing these three things in a constructive way? And by constructive, I mean, are you taking the conversation forward? If so, then perhaps you can call yourself a journalist. If not so, and you're creating more smoke, as the Harvard Business Review writer had written, then I think we need to have better mechanisms in place to understand the role of journalism.
Thank you so much, Mehr. सीरत, बिल्डिंग ऑन जो मेहर ने भी कहा कि एक तो के कंज्यूमर की भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी आती है इसके ऊपर, एंड जो भी बात हुई कि जी अब हर बंदा सिटीजन एक जर्नलिज्म बन गया है सारा कुछ. इस तरह अभी मैं इलॉन मस्क का देख रहा था, इज ऑब्वियसली इंडोर्स्ड ट्रम्प, एंड ही वो कहते हैं कि जी जो एक्स है इट्स द लार्जेस्ट न्यूज प्लेटफॉर्म इन द वर्ल्ड. एंड मतलब मेरी काम अकली समझें कि आई नेवर थॉट कि एक बंदा जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का मालिक है वो मेरी जो मैं ट्वीट्स कर रहा हूँ उसको भी अपनी एजेंसी की एक प्रॉपर्टी समझ के आगे कर रहा है उसको एम्पलीफाई. सो like how are these big social media companies responding to these reports? I'm sure report होती हैं ये सारी चीजें, हमने भी देखा, और फिर हमें सुनने को मिलता है कि बहुत दफा ये social media companies जो हैं they just don't act on it unless significant pressure is exerted. So like how does that work कि अगर हमें कुछ मिला है objectionable या untrue, तो किस तरह उसके ऊपर ये रिएक्ट करती हैं?
थैंक यू रजा. आई थिंक बहुत रेलेवेंट सवाल है आपका, और सबसे पहले समझने की जरूरत है कि हमें डिस्टिंग्विश करने की जरूरत है कि कंटेंट क्रिएटर्स कौन है और जर्नलिस्ट कौन है. आई फील लाइक वो लाइंस इतनी ब्लर हो गई हैं अब कि दिस इज व्हाई अ लॉट ऑफ द कंटेंट दैट इज अप देयर वो कंटेंट क्रिएटर्स पब्लिश कर रहे होते हैं, बट उनको इन द स्कोप ऑफ जर्नलिज्म लाया जाता है और कहा जाता है कि एक जर्नलिस्ट ने रिपोर्ट किया है, जिससे डिसइंफॉर्मेशन और मिसइंफॉर्मेशन और फैल रही है. एंड अगेन आई थिंक मोनेटाइजेशन की बात जो मेहर ने की थी वो बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है. सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म्स की एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है ऑफ कर्बिंग डिसइंफॉर्मेशन एंड मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन, एंड पर्टिकुलरली जब वो मोनेटाइज हो रहा है और बैड एक्टर्स उसको इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. अभी हम यही देख रहे हैं कि प्रायोरिटी है कि मोनेटाइजेशन को लाया जाए पाकिस्तान के अंदर, और उसके गाइज में जिस किस्म की न्यूज आ रही है ऑनलाइन, चाहे वो डिसइंफॉर्मेशन हार्मफुल है, किस तरह के कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस हो रहे हैं, उसको फिर भी आगे एम्पलीफाई किया जाए. एंड दिस इज नॉट समथिंग जो बाय द वे पहली दफा हुआ है. द केसेस दैट हैपेंड इन अभी प्रोटेस्ट पंजाब में जो हुए हैं, दिस हैज आल्सो हैपेंड बिफोर. यूके में अभी जो 2024 में समर्स में प्रोटेस्ट हुए थे वो वही थे. एंड अगेन देयर वाज एन एक्टर दैट वाज इन्वॉल्व्ड दैट वाज बेस्ड इन पाकिस्तान. चैनल 3 नाउ वाज द चैनल जो लाहौर बेसिक वेब सर्विस थी, जिसने एक इंफॉर्मेशन फैलाई एंड वो इतनी एम्पलीफाई की कि वो प्रोटेस्ट. तो वी सॉ वेरी सिमिलर पैटर्न्स हैपनिंग ओवर देयर. बट द थिंग इज दैट global north countries, UK जैसी countries, US जैसी countries, they now have regulations about these things. So Digital Services Act एक act आया जिसमें social media companies की platforms की performance जो है वो accountable ठहराए गए, उनको transparent होना पड़ा अपनी उसके लिए जो practices हैं और जो content वो monetize कर रहे हैं उसके हवाले से उनको explanations देनी पड़ी. तो Unfortunately, we don't see platforms की priority in global south countries. हमारी country एक priority नहीं है. Digital Services Act जैसे acts हमारे ऊपर नहीं आते. And again, इसमें मैं एक और चीज add करूंगी कि by no means do I say कि we should over-regulate our platforms as well. I don't mean that by at all because I feel like कि अभी एक जो strategy government अपना रही है over-regulation की वो भी ठीक नहीं है. जिसमें जो लोग प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे थे उनके ऊपर पीका के अंडर केसेस फाइल हो रहे थे, दैट इज ऑल्सो नॉट फेयर. आई फील लाइक देयर नीड्स टू बी अ बैलेंस दैट नीड्स टू बी स्ट्रक एट दिस मोमेंट, जिसमें हमें स्टेट को देखना चाहिए कि डिसइंफॉर्मेशन जो हो रही है उसको कर्व करने के लिए अगर कोई अवेयरनेस टेक्निक्स हों, अगर हम हमारे जो पॉलिसी मेकर्स हैं उनके अंदर एजुकेशन हो कि वो डिसइंफॉर्मेशन और मिसइंफॉर्मेशन को डिस्टिंग्विश कर पाए, वो समझ भी पाए ये हैं क्या और ये कहाँ से स्टेम कर रही हैं. I feel like part of the problem is, and as Digital Rights Foundation, we work with a lot of journalists, policymakers, and everybody. People still do not understand कि disinformation और misinformation क्या है, intention क्या है लोगों की उसमें. There is an intent to harm in disinformation, which is very vivid and very obvious, जो लोग नहीं understand करते. So I don't believe पंजाब defamation bill जैसे bills आने चाहिए जिसमें journalist का freedom of curb कर दिया जाए. उनको support करना चाहिए at this time and एक clear distinction होनी चाहिए content creators और उसमें और platforms की responsibility होनी चाहिए. You mentioned X, which I feel like is a very touchy subject for all of us. लेकिन what we're seeing on X at the moment completely shows कि एक platform किस तरीके से hate amplify कर सकता है और किस तरीके से वो ऑफलाइन कॉन्सिक्वेंस हम सबके लिए हो सकता है. सो एंड दिस इज नॉट द फर्स्ट टाइम दैट दिस हैज हैपेंड, लेकिन अब वो एम्पलीफाई इतना ज्यादा हो रहा है कि जर्नलिस्ट के ऊपर तो पहले से एक्स पे जो भी अटैक्स होते थे वो इतने ज्यादा होते थे कि दे हैव टू सेल्फ सेंसर देमसेल्व्स. ह्यूमन राइट्स डिफेंडर्स भी यही कर रहे थे, खवातीन भी ये कर रही थी. बट अब हम देख रहे हैं कि हर किसी को ये प्लेटफॉर्म अफेक्ट कर रहा है एंड देयर इज नो कंट्रोल and there is no transparency of how they're monetizing content on the platform. So I feel कि platforms को अब step up करने की जरूरत है. They are service providers. Our data is something that they're consuming and उसके लिए वो monetary benefits उनको मिल रहे हैं. So now it is the time to ask questions from platforms कि वो क्या कर रहे हैं और अगर डिसइंफॉर्मेशन होती है तो उनको क्या करना चाहिए, जैसे वो ग्लोबल नॉर्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में ग्लोबल नॉर्थ कंट्रीज में कर रहे हैं जो यहाँ भी प्रैक्टिस हो पाए. सो आई थिंक आई विल जस्ट स्टॉप देयर. या
Thank you so much, Seerat. Very valid points raised. एक चीज जो हमने आई थिंक अभी इस्टेब्लिश की है कि सिटीजन जर्नलिज्म, लाइसेंस जर्नलिज्म, कंटेंट क्रिएटर्स की एक डिस्टिंक्शन हमें पैदा करनी होगी. ऑब्वियसली वाइल बीइंग माइंडफुल कि हम सेंसरशिप की तरफ इसको नहीं लेके जा रहे, लेकिन ये बिल्कुल उसी तरह की चीज है जहां इलॉन मस्क जैसे लोग फ्री स्पीच को यूज करते हैं टू इनसाइट हेट्रेड, के दे टेक शेल्टर अंडर कि जी हर एक को हक है वो जो मर्जी बोलना चाहे. मरियम, आप लाइक आपका प्लेटफॉर्म भी इज वेरी सेंटर टुवर्ड्स यूथ एंड आप एक सिटीजन जर्नलिज्म प्रोग्राम भी रन करते हो जहां यू वांट यंग जर्नलिस्ट जो आए और वो अपने आवाज आगे लोगों तक पहुंचा सके. सो लाइक हाउ डज वन बैलेंस दिस के जहां मतलब मैं अपना एग्जांपल लूंगा, जब हम दुनिया डिजिटल शुरू कर रहे थे तो हमें जरूरत थी कि जी इन्फ्लुएंसर्स को हम लें और वो हमारे से कोलैबोरेटिव पोस्ट बनाएं ताकि हम उनकी ऑडियंस तक रीच आउट कर सकें और सारा. तो उस तरह हम भी उनको क्रेडिबिलिटी दे रहे होते हैं by bringing on these content creators and influencers on our platform. So how does one balance this? Is it? Yeah.
Sorry, I lost it for a second. I have a different point of view on this. Having, I can hear you. Considering my staff is all under the age of 28, and they're very Gen Z, and we work with them. And like you said, we work with a lot of citizen journalists. Kids that we're training that are in university. I don't think that there is a need to regulate as much. And अगर ये government level पे regulation होगी तो फिर तो मैं इसके बिल्कुल खिलाफ हूँ, considering आप कौन सी government से क्या regulate करा रहे हैं, वो किसको सहाफी मानते हैं, किसको नहीं मानते, तो हम सबको ही पता है कि बहुत problematic हो सकता है. So I don't know if that would be how that would actually take place. Also, I know Imran Khan ke time mein there was a big movement on trying to figure out, okay, how to monitor digital platforms. And I say, how are you going to even begin to do this? I think that's a very big question around the world. And I think that there are people, citizen journalists, there are influencers. This is a problem that's worldwide. It's not very specific to us. It is specific to us, but दुनिया भर में ये issue चल रहा है. So I think even curbing them, I don't think is the solution. Everybody will believe, like I said, what they want to believe. And at that time, they have to, person themselves should be aware enough, or we should help try to create this awareness that they should follow people that they deem credible, that are giving them factual information. I'll give you an example. When we first started posting about the Punjab rape case, हमारे सारे comments जो हजारों में जा रहे थे सारे negative थे कि जी बिल्कुल हुआ है, cover up हुआ है, cover up हुआ है. Then that's when we decided, let's actually do like what can we do to find out what happened. So we spent 2 days, we looked at everything we could find, we messaged people that commented us, we looked at other comments, we literally went to the ground as much as we could, and we messaged and we got them to send us information. And a lot of people, these are young kids that I'm talking about, university kids, emailed us, messaged us, sent us what they had, the content, whatever they could find also. And it was very nice to see that they were very interested and active in wanting to try to solve this problem, right? अब उसके अंदर जब हमने वीडियो पब्लिश की, एक तो उसकी फीडबैक बहुत अच्छी थी, एंड अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल मैसेज अस सेइंग दैट ओके नाउ वी कैन अंडरस्टैंड कि हुआ क्या है एंड व्हाई इट मेक्स सेंस कि नहीं हुआ है. और उसमें अगर आप कमेंट्स की रेशियो भी देखते तो इफ इट वाज like 90% negative initially, it gradually turned to about 60 to 70% where you saw people actually arguing with each other and saying कि भाई ये भी तो देखें, ये भी तो ये फैक्ट है, ये भी हो सकता है, वो भी हो सकता है, because you're actually going on ground and doing that. And I think that's more important than highlighting कि ये बंदा सही है या ये बंदा गलत है, ये सहाफी है, ये सहाफी नहीं है, because you can't stop that. Technically, Imran Riaz is a Sahafi, but he has a particular point of view. You have a lot of Sahafis that have their own YouTube channels, and why should they not? And generally, they're doing it for whatever motivation that they have. But the point is that a Sahafi now is not a balanced person as such. I think worldwide again debate है कि हर बंदे का एक अपना point of view होता है, वो at this point they give that point of view. So I think the more important thing is to help the armed public understand कि जी how can you actually make sense of this WhatsApp message, कहाँ से आया है, does it make sense, किसी credible organization ने report किया है नहीं किया है. हमारे बहुत अच्छे credible organizations हैं जो करते ही नहीं करते. ट्विटर का अकाउंट चेक करें, कौन ट्विटर का अकाउंट कर रहा है, उसको फॉलो करें जब करना चाहते हैं. So and उसकी फिर बुनियाद पे make your own opinion. And I think eventually जाकर, if you ask me, when things are not factual, they die down. For example, beheaded babies, अब जितने भी believe करेंगे वो करेंगे because they want to believe it. But at the end of the day, everybody has reported that it did not happen. Same thing with the Punjab rape case. It is an issue that has relatively gotten out of the spotlight because of the fact that there is nothing else to gather on it. Because अब हुआ ही नहीं एक चीज तो फिर क्या उस पे gather करेंगे. So that's my point of view on this, in the sense that we should educate the public rather than trying to figure out who's a Sahafi and who's not.
Amber, I'll bring it to you. Like you, आपने शुरू किया कि ये licensed journalism की तरफ जाना चाहिए, and I was also looking at it क्योंकि हम भी खुद जब शुरू कर रहे थे कि your news organization is also like started like has collaborated with a couple of influencers to get their audience, and perhaps so and I relate to that because we were trying to do something very similar. So how does one balance this? क्योंकि अब आप जिस तरह अगर चले मैं एक 18-19 साल का सिटीजन हूँ और मैं देखता हूँ तो फिर अब मेरी नजर में वो शख्स भी एक जर्नलिस्ट है क्योंकि वो एक न्यूज ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ एक काम कर रहा है. So yeah, please.
No, I think that's an excellent point, and I would fight for this because I've worked in the journalism field for 20 years. I've worked for print, I've been a reporter, I've been a producer, I've been on screen and I've been off screen. And I have a lot of respect for all these journalists who may not be Imran Riaz Khans, who do not have YouTube channels, but who do so much amazing work that's not acknowledged. And I do want to point out that it is so much harder to be accurate and verify information than say whatever is popular, whatever gets you more clicks and likes. So I do think people are unable to make that differentiation. And I found one of the weirdest things when I've been unemployed several times in my life. And I remember I was at somewhere and somebody asked me, so what do you do? And I said, I'm a journalist. Oh, aap kaun se TV channel pe hain? This assumption that if you're a journalist, you have to be on a TV channel or you have to have now your own YouTube channel. I think that is frankly very offensive because I even believe that there are people who maybe, non-linear editors, who are cameramen, who in a sense also do a lot of the job of journalists because every video that you edit, there's an editorial choice behind it. So it is so easy to say what you feel and not differentiate between fact and opinion and make big claims. And it is much harder to do the work that's unrecognized and behind the scenes. Anybody who, and Mehr would agree with me here, anybody who has worked in a newspaper, worked on stories, will know that there are at least 4 people, from creative to the editor to the reporter to sort of the senior editor, who goes through every piece. And there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens before it goes out to be published. Now, addressing your question about influencers, let's be clear. Journalists and media organizations do need to make money. These are commercial enterprises. So whether you're a newspaper, whether you have a TV channel, or whether you're a digital platform, you do need to pay your staff. You do need money to run it. You do need eyeballs. And we, for instance, we're very clear because Nukta is actually run by journalists, is that we do differentiate between partnerships, paid partnerships, influencers. The influencers that are on board with promoting our brand, they're very clearly influencers. They're not journalists. They do a job that I think journalists have been doing traditionally as well, which is telling people about the world, helping people understand the world, discovering new things. And that's okay. But those people are also very clearly influencers, So I don't see a problem as long as it's all properly labeled and correctly identified. And I, like I said, I think in this day and age, I have so much more respect for journalists than I used to, which is why I talk about licensing, which is why I think, because, for instance, we're talking about Elon Musk and regulation. These social media companies, my presentation has always been, my belief has been, have taken over the job of what media organizations used to do. And we're just running second, to all of them. Now, Brazil is an interesting example of how they dealt with Twitter and Elon Musk, because there was a lot of election-related violence and challenging results over there as well, very similar to what happened in Pakistan. But they had a Supreme Court that went ahead and said, well, we're going to shut it down unless you take down these accounts. Elon Musk initially said that I'm not going to do it. Do what you want. I have Starlink Communications, which is my satellite service, and we're going to keep Twitter open through there. But eventually, because Brazil was a big market, Brazil was a big market, not just for Twitter, but also Starlink, eventually Elon Musk also bowed down. So in terms of regulation, I do think that the Global South should be very, very cautious about regulation. We also need to have a sort of probably more unified strategy. We make up a large chunk of the population of the world that uses social media. And yet, unlike the EU, unlike other regions, we're not really unified in terms of responding to a lot of the problems that we have. And because we have so many authoritarian regimes that are far more interested in controlling information rather than helping the public understand, differentiate between good information and bad information that is obviously false, and information that is factual. I do think that this is probably should be more concerted strategy. Yeah, that's my sort of take on it.
मेहर, जिस तरह भी अंबर और मरियम बात कर रहे थे कि एक इंफॉर्मेशन कंट्रोल के ऊपर कि जी ठीक है कि एक तरफ ये है कि अगर लोग इंटरेस्टेड हैं, वो एंगेज करना चाहते हैं एक कॉन्वर्सेशन में, बेशक उनके पास वो सहाफत का नहीं है बैकग्राउंड, तो और उनके पास कोई इंफॉर्मेशन है या उनके मतलब शौक के साथ या स्किल सेट के साथ चलता है, तो दे हैव द राइट टू शेयर. बट एट द सेम टाइम हम किस तरह डिफरेंशिएट करें कि जो एक कंटेंट क्रिएटर है, एक इन्फ्लुएंसर है जो सोशल इश्यूज पे बात करता है लेकिन सहाफी नहीं है। तो ये सारी बात हम पांच तो इस वक्त समझ सकते हैं यहाँ, लेकिन जिन लोगों के लिए ये चीज बनाई जा रही है, जिनकी कंजम्पशन के लिए, उन तक ये जो एक तफरीक है, ये जो डिफ्रेंसिएशन है कि जी ये सहाफी कह रहा है और ये एक कंटेंट क्रिएटर कह रहा है, बहुत दफा अगर हमने करना हो तो जी पेड पार्टनरशिप आ जाता है, विच ऑब्वियसली ऑल न्यूज ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस डू इश्तिहार वगैरह के लिए। लेकिन ये एक फर्क चीज है। यहाँ मैं अगर नुक्ता देख रहा हूँ तो वो भी मैं अपने इंस्टाग्राम पे देख रहा हूँ, मैं द करंट देख रहा हूँ वो भी मैं इंस्टाग्राम पे देख रहा हूँ, और मैं एक इन्फ्लुएंसर को भी अपने इंस्टाग्राम रील पे ही देख रहा हूँ। क्योंकि पहले हमारे पास ये था कि अखबार में एक प्रिंटेड चीज थी, हमारे पास टीवी था, तो जो टीवी स्क्रीन पे आ रहा है वो फर्क है और जो फोन पे आ रहा है वो फर्क है। अब जो टूल है, या आप समझिए जो डिवाइस है जिसपे हम सब कुछ देख रहे हैं, वो जियो है, वो नुक्ता है, वो तो करंट है, वो कोई कंटेंट क्रिएटर है, वो सब कुछ यूट्यूब और इंस्टाग्राम है। तो एक आम कंज्यूमर के लिए तो फिर सब लोग एक जैसे हैं।
बिल्कुल नहीं, मेरे नहीं ख्याल से। पहली बात वही आ जाती है रजा, कि सर मैंने पहले कहा था कि हमें समझना चाहिए और देखना चाहिए कि मीडिया के टूल्स और प्लेटफॉर्म्स किस चीज के लिए इस्तेमाल किए जा रहे हैं, बात वहां से शुरू होती है। दूसरी बात आ जाती है कि इज इट लाइसेंस जर्नलिज्म वर्सेस ऑडियंस चॉइसेस। अब जो बात मरियम कह रही है, जो बात अंबर कह रही है, वो एक रैशनल माइंडसेट से कह रही है कि भाई सोचो, सीरत कह रही है कि भाई सोचो समझो कि अगर आप ये करेंगे तो इसका इम्पैक्ट ये होगा, अगर आप ये लेजिस्लेशन लाएंगे इसका ये होगा, अगर आप आजादी देंगे तो इसके कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस ये होंगे। ये एक रैशनल माइंडसेट से आ रहा है, क्योंकि हमने अपने अपने कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस भुगते भी हैं, देखे भी हैं, लड़ाई भी जारी है हम सारों की। बात आ जाती है कि आपके ऑडियंस की क्या है माइंडसेट। देयर आर 3 schools of thought, there's cultural, there's structural and there's rational। स्ट्रक्चर तो ना कभी पाकिस्तान में थी, ना भी कभी होएगी, और उम्मीद है कि किसी दिन आ जाएगी। रैशनल जो है ओवर टाइम कम होती जा रही है। कल्चरल से मुराद ये नहीं कि सकाफती है कि ढोल बजते पहने दैट्स इट, नहीं, इट्स अबाउट कि भी आपकी जो ज़हनियत है, आप इंफॉर्मेशन किस तरह से कंज्यूम कर रहे हो, आप किस लेंस से कर रहे हो, आप प्रोविंशियल से देख रहे हो, आप सेक्टेरियन से देख रहे हो, आप एथनिसिटी वाइज से देख रहे हो, और फिर अकॉर्डिंगली आप अपना डिसीजन जो होता है, या आप अपना जो आपकी फाइनल अंडरस्टैंडिंग होती है, दैट कलर्स इट, it influences it. So even when we're talking about influences, I think we have to understand that the audience is not coming necessarily with a rational mindset that, all right, what's right or wrong? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? What, with the Punjab rape case, there was a lot of reactionary behavior, right? As Mariam spoke about, as looking at the comments, that when you put something out there, there's a lot of reaction. Now, that reaction does not necessarily mean that it's rational. It's also emotional. So I think the when it comes down to licensed journalism versus audience choices, that's a really, really gray, murky area. And there needs to be more engagement about that. The third thing that I'd like to highlight is that you need to ask 3 major questions. Is technology really that powerful? Initially, होता था कि online issue, forgive me, offline issues were manifesting themselves onto online spaces. The idea was that, we'll be all connected, we'll all like each other, we'll all speak to each other, we'll all become friends and be one big happy family. That has not happened. And in the context of Pakistan, what we're seeing now is you have online hatred manifesting into offline violence, right? So the thing is, you have to understand, when people come onto online digital spaces, आप आना चाहते हैं 100 बिस्मिल्लाह, आप बात करना चाहते हैं 100 बिस्मिल्लाह, लेकिन उसके consequences क्या हैं, right? Who is going to be held accountable for those consequences? The second thing is, how do you keep data, or how do you keep information safe? I've been a victim of where I said something and it was completely manipulated, and it was completely driven in a direction which was actually quite dangerous. And I'm certain, Seerat, आपके पास बहुत इस तरह के cases आते होंगे जहाँ पे इंसान कोई बात, अब इस webinar में कोई बात करे, anybody who does not agree with any one of us can take that one clip, manipulate it, and that's it. Who faces the consequences of that, right? So how do you keep that information safe? And कितनी दफा आप explain करेंगे कि भाईजान ये मेरा मतलब नहीं था, मैं ये नहीं कह रही थी, आप क्या फायर फाइटिंग आ जाती है, right? Fire fighting अगर आप नहीं करेंगे, उसकी consequences अलग होते हैं. And finally, I think if we are to sort of find a middle ground, somewhere, अच्छा जी रेगुलेशन को भी ना करनी है, हर किसी को आजादी भी देनी, जी आप भी सहाफत का ठप्पा लगा लें और जी ऑडियंस भी हमारी जो है समझदार होगी, पढ़ लिखे हैं, तो फिर ठीक है यार, फिर इकट्ठे बैठ के लॉन्ग टर्म स्ट्रैटेजी बनाते हैं जहाँ पे हम समझें कि टेक्नोलॉजी से मुराद ये नहीं है कि एआई वगैरह हो, पर टेक्नोलॉजी जो मोबाइल फोन हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं, आईपैड इस्तेमाल करते हैं, व्हाटएवर इट इज दैट वी यूजिंग टू कंज्यूम इंफॉर्मेशन, कि आपको समझ भी आ रही है, क्योंकि it's not just about consumption of information, it's also your data, your mapping, which will have real life consequences. So for something as small as applying for a visa, applying for a job, going abroad, you will be held to account for your digital footprint. So do you really know the consequences of the information that you're consuming and you're sharing and you're resharing, and then you're saying, yeah, because this aligns with my mindset in the context of Pakistan, which is heavily cultural. Do you know the consequences? Anybody can say what they want, but if you're consuming it, you're going to face the music alone. And I think that's where the real sort of chink can be made in what we're looking at is a very, very dark, murky area.
Yeah, like just before I come to Seerat, and I like to throw this thing at the journalists once again. Kate, जो आपने examples दिए हैं, it honestly depends on where we are and who we are like talking to while having this conversation. मुझे याद है जब ये पिछले साल से जब ये जंग शुरू हुई है गाजा में, बहुत से लोगों ने ये कहा कि we never hate the internet again, कि अगर इंटरनेट ना होता तो मीडिया ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जिस तरह का नैरेटिव बिल्ड कर रही हैं, जो एस्टैब्लिश्ड मीडिया और हुआ, उसके बाद बहुत से लोगों ने मतलब गूगल सर्चेस की कि क्या ये जो क्लेम था कि एनएचएस को जाएंगे पैसे या ईयू से निकलने का मतलब क्या है, बिकॉज पीपल वर जस्ट सो riled in the like in the political rhetoric. So just throwing this at the journalist before I go to Seerat,
I agree with you, Raza, because this is something we saw during the war on terror. I mean, when 9/11 happened, I was in Britain at the time. And believe it or not, but even if you Google something like Iraq, or you Google something like, Pakistan or Osama bin Laden, that was used to screen your job applications. So absolutely, when it comes to digital media, it has been happening for a while. And I hear you completely on what would the news be like if it wasn't for social media. So the real question is, who's really influencing who?
Yeah, and like Chat GPT, like अगर Chat GPT से आप सवाल पूछते हैं, there have been so many, like people have said so many instances जहाँ there's such a bias inherent in the answer, and now Chat GPT को Wikipedia से भी बढ़कर आगे चीजें लोगों को जवाब मिल रहा है यूनिवर्सिटीज में सारा. So like now as journalists, like जहाँ काम है कि इंफॉर्मेशन आपने कंट्रोल करनी है, अंबर मरियम मेहर एडिटोरियल आपने एक डिसीजन लेना है, लाइक these जो टूल्स थे जो हमें बताया गया था कि जी ट्विटर यूट्यूब वगैरह आपकी सहूलत के लिए हैं कि जहां आप अपना काम रख सकते हैं, ये आपके एक तरह से कंपेटिटर्स साबित हो रहे हैं क्योंकि ये आपको नाउ देयर. सो हाउ डू यू लाइक डील विद दिस?
मेरे ख्याल से generative AI का there's two things, right? It offers staggering potential for one, automation, which is what we've seen in the Gaza, where a whole genocide has been streamed live. And the other one is disruption. Is the information that is being put out there creating a disruption? Is it changing? If it is creating a disruption, is it a negative disruption? Is it a positive disruption? In the sense, is it making way for progress? Is it making way for the breakdown of societal and state impact? So I think you really need to understand that you've got to start the conversation from somewhere, that how powerful is technology, and is it being used to automate? For example, people talk about media literacy, creating digital literacy, and I've done a lot of work in South Punjab on this. That is about automating business and creating market linkages and all of that. And on the other hand, there's the other side. It's a double-edged sword. There's also a cultural disruption. When you are seeing women, for example, in the name of gender and inclusion being part of the digital realm, what you're also seeing is an onslaught of hatred directed towards them, amongst other communities. I'm just taking women as an example. The idea is that where do we begin to regulate, or I hate this word regulate actually, but where do you begin to sort of address the issues when it comes to AI, generative AI? Chat GPT, people are lauding it. I'm fine. I'm all for new development in technology. But look, Raza, when you ask a question, how are you framing it? What you are questioning and what I am questioning, we have two different minds. It's not a matter of ki kiska dimag zyada khoobsurat hai. It's not about that. It's about understanding of language, understanding of a media tool, understanding that what are you looking for, right? And this is where the difference between looking for answers to suit your narrative, or you're investigating something, or you're actually trying to find some information, that's where the differences come in, right? And I think, Seerat, you probably be better equipped to answer this in terms of how do you navigate what you're looking for? How do you utilize tech? Is tech really that powerful that it's influencing us, or are we influencing the tech to give us the answers that we're looking for? So वो language and technology का जो आ जाता है, and again it comes down to this कि what is the role of media literacy then? Is it to create value? Which I think it is. That's what I firmly believe. If you're using tools and all these wonderful things out there, is it creating value in your life, personally, professionally, or is it really sort of, you can figure these things out. Are you able to move forward in your life in any way or not with the information that you're getting? And if you're looking for validation, बात वही आ जाती है कि आपको instant gratification चाहिए.
So, Seerat, आप जवाब दे दो, and then I'd like the journalist to have a final word then.
I think जो एक चीज समझने की जरूरत है, because we keep coming up that technology पे बहुत ज्यादा political movements और social movements अब हो रही हैं, तो technology is also political. We need to understand that, because now we see जो founders like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they also have political stances. तो उनका platform भी एक political stance लेता है. तो जो आप algorithms, आपको content आप देख रहे हैं, वो manipulate जिस तरीके से हो रहा है, जो LLMs हम देख रहे हैं, जो keyword searches हम देख रहे हैं, सब कुछ देख रहे हैं, that's all very politically motivated. And I think with the Israel and Gaza conflict, ये हमें और ज्यादा clarity आ गई है. एक चीज जो समझने की जरूरत है, जो आई फील लाइक बहुत ज्यादा बार बार कॉन्वर्सेशंस आती है, कि रेगुलेशन तो ऑफ कोर्स वी डोंट वांट, बट एट द सेम टाइम पॉलिसी मेकर्स की अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ प्लेटफॉर्म्स इज वेरी लो राइट नाउ. आई फील लाइक देयर इज अ ह्यूज गैप इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि किस तरीके से प्लेटफॉर्म्स फंक्शन करते हैं. दिस इज नॉट जस्ट इन पाकिस्तान. अभी यूएस में अभी तक नहीं समझ आ रहा कि टिकटॉक क्या है, टीमू क्या है, व्हाट आर दीज एप्स एंड व्हाट आर दे डूइंग. सो अब पाकिस्तान के अंदर भी ये कॉन्वर्सेशंस होना शुरू हो गई हैं, और हम इसीलिए देखते हैं कि इतना बड़ा गैप है. ड्यूरिंग द इलेक्शंस, नाउ वी हैव एन इलेक्शन एक्ट जो 2018 में बना, व्हिच इजंट फेयरली इतनी पुरानी बात, बट उसमें अभी तक ऑनलाइन पॉलिटिकल एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स के हवाले से कोई बात नहीं होती. सो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज ड्यूरिंग द इलेक्शंस, हमने सारे किस्म के पॉलिटिकल एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स देखे जो मोनेटाइज भी हो रहे थे, बट डिस्पाइट दैट देयर इज नो लॉ रिगार्डिंग दिस, देयर इज नो रूल्स रिगार्डिंग दिस. So policymakers need to understand the law, and then platforms need to come and sit with civil society organizations and media outlets to actually work with them कि किस तरह अब हम लोग platforms को एक ऐसी space बना पाए जहां information को manipulate नहीं किया जा रहा और वो disinformation में turn नहीं हो रही. And I believe एक चीज जो हमें बार बार understand करने की जरूरत है, वो ये है कि, and I know कि journalists यहाँ जो हैं, मेहर, अंबर and मरियम, वो इसके बारे में बहुत डिटेल में बात कर सकते हैं कि there is a very, एक तो है कि disinformation platforms की वजह से हो रही है, but there is also एक risk जो बहुत ज्यादा है कि जर्नलिस्ट के ऊपर बहुत प्रेशर है, द न्यूज रूम प्रेशर ऑफ ब्रेकिंग द न्यूज. आई फील लाइक उसकी वजह से हम फैक्ट चेक और सोर्स वेरिफिकेशन नहीं कर पा रहे, और उसकी वजह से हम लैग बिहाइंड कर रहे हैं. सो न्यूज आउटलेट्स को भी जरूरत है कि वो स्टेप अप करें, और वो इंस्टेड ऑफ रिपोर्टिंग समथिंग विदाउट वेरीफाइंग इट, do their homework and then report on it. I think the current का जो काम था, जो नुक्ता काम कर रहा है, जो सारी organizations काम कर रही हैं, particularly जब अब protests हुए हैं, तो अब हमें realize हुआ है कि fact checking और source verification क्यों जरूरी है journalist के लिए भी and generally भी लोगों के लिए. And अगेन अवेयरनेस रेजिंग सिर्फ एक लेवल पे नहीं हो सकती, सिर्फ जर्नलिस्ट या कंटेंट क्रिएटर सब कुछ नहीं कर सकते, सिविल सोसाइटी को भी करना है, पॉलिसी मेकर्स को भी करना है, प्लेटफॉर्म्स को भी करना है. एंड नाउ आई डोंट वांट टू गेट इनटू एआई, बट जनरेटिव एआई इज अ होल अनदर बॉल गेम. Now we can't even distinguish what is true and what isn't because of generative AI content and images and visuals. So now I feel like जो messaging है वो सिर्फ अंग्रेजी में नहीं होनी चाहिए, वो सिर्फ उर्दू में नहीं होनी चाहिए. Now we need to sit in our homes and we need to talk to our elders and everybody who is consuming information online, and even included in our curriculums, because अब I feel like there's no point left कि अब अभी भी हम online platforms के बारे में बात अपने curriculums में भी नहीं करते, which is absurd because every child is using these platforms now, and an entire generation is growing up on it. So now I feel like एक्चुअल स्ट्रक्चरल चीजें करने की जरूरत है जो इंस्टीट्यूशंस के अंदर सीप इन करें, इंस्टेड ऑफ जस्ट मेकिंग प्रोमिसेस. और पॉलिसी मेकर्स को अब अंडरस्टैंड करने की जरूरत नहीं है, उनको मतलब अब अंडरस्टैंड कर लेना चाहिए कि ये क्या है, एंड ओवर रेगुलेशन से या सेंसर करने से कोई सोल्यूशन नहीं मिलेगा इस सब का. सो आई विल जस्ट स्टॉप देयर.
Amber and Mariam, thoughts?
Okay, so I want to say that I do despair. I'm going to be very clear. I don't think that there is a way to control social media platforms which are responsible for a lot of the issues that we're talking about. ऐसा नहीं है propaganda or mis or disinformation पहले नहीं था, पहले भी था. It's just spreading faster, and because of the breakdown, as I keep saying, that I think the institution of journalism is not what it was. It's not respected. It doesn't have the same kind of. It is not where people turn to for as a first source of or primary source of information. So this is social media platforms are profiting in a very different way. They have absolutely no sense of responsibility. Just now, there was a fantastic piece in NPR about how an Elon Musk company was funding Kamala Harris ads, fake Kamala Harris ads on Facebook. So, and this guy runs one of the biggest platforms in the world. He has a very clear political agenda. He's been promoting right-wing, far-right, accounts as well. He's done away with lots of content producers, etc. So don't have hope there. As far as people are concerned, yes, I mean, in the ideal space, in the ideal world, we should start media literacy and digital literacy in schools. As part of the CEJ, हमने इस पे बहुत ज्यादा काम किया था. I developed a curriculum. We went to about 16 universities across Pakistan, जिनमें से 8 तो मैं ही गई थी, which was Sawat and Quetta and Karachi के अंदर भी. And those sessions are great, they do well, but really it should be a part of it should be compulsory part of the curriculum. It should start from primary school. Frankly, it's not enough to target adult, young people. So I do despair because I think people are too liable, and it's too easy for them to believe what they want to believe. I don't think we have solutions at the moment. जब हम government या policy makers को देखते हैं, they want to control information, and they do a hatchet job. It's really just very singularly about legislating, about criminalizing, about punitive action, really without looking at it from a broader, holistic point of view. So I despair in terms of people, social media companies, audiences, as well as the government. Where I do have hope, however, is obviously a lot of great news organizations, jo Pakistan mein bhi hain, who are continuing to do the work they do without being appreciated, without looking for the clicks and likes. I salute them. I still have hope, just in terms of the fact that they still exist. And I hope they continue to do the great work that they do. For everything else, I despair.
Thank you, Amber. Mariam.
But I'm sorry, I do not despair.
I'm glad you do, because I studied this from every angle, and I'm like, try to find solutions from every angle. Talk to so many people, and जब मुझे फिर जाके कोई कहता है ये तो सच होगा,
Anyway, 100% right, and there's no doubt. I don't despair because Instagram gave me Motaz, it gave me Bisan, it gave me Hind, who were just photographers, kids that wanted to live their lives, and then they're still, 2 of them are still there, and they're reporting now, and then for credible news networks also, as well as their own Instagram accounts. And I don't, because I through just specific instances where we've interacted with our audience, I think this young generation of Pakistan is very opinionated. It's very difficult to change their opinions, but I like that. I like the fact that they have an opinion on everything. चाहे वो जैसा भी हो, हमें बिल्कुल सर पकड़ के बैठना ही पड़े, लेकिन है तो they are willing to go out, they are willing to stand for what they believe in. And I do feel like if we work with them and inform them in the way that we think, हमें जो सही लगता है as Sahafi, तो I think that after some time they will develop and be more aware. I don't think that that's not, every place has people that are going to be these Instagram accounts that spread hate and misinformation and disinformation. You can't stop that. It's going to be very difficult. So you have to accept it. But I do have faith in the fact that this country has a young generation that is willing to some extent listen to some facts. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people change. I've seen opinions change. I've seen people become more open and at least open to a debate. It's not even, okay, chalo, I can't change your mind, but are you willing to debate with me? Yes, I'm willing to at least have a conversation with you, which I think is a big thing. So I don't, so I'm on the other side, even though I had to leave a WhatsApp group because I was just like, oh God, I can't do this anymore with the whole,
I'm sorry, I was a prophet of gloom, actually. Sorry about that. I mean, the only way that we can resolve this is when people stop believing it and sharing it. And I don't see.
I don't think you can stop answering that sharing anything on WhatsApp.
I know that. Look, I am a fan of the fact that whether it was starting back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, which is Arab Spring onwards, how young people and people have actually used social media for good. Even now, आज भी जब हमारे इतने bad faith actors हैं, there are a lot of people who are doing great work, which is what gives me hope. It's the people who are continuing to do what they do without the impact that I wish it would have, and that's why it is better.
I think you're. I think personally,
you can convince a couple of people, but when you see the general trend, it's sad.
I don't know. I think it's shifting. I don't know.
I don't know.
I agree with you. This seriously, it's सब मारने का दिल चाहता है दीवार पर जाके कहीं ना कहीं जाके भाग जाओ. And I have made such wild bets to prove that something has not happened. कि मैं ये कर दूंगी, मैं बता रही हूँ. ठीक है कि ये अगर सच because it's such a battle. I agree with you to a very, very large extent, but I do think that we should give them some benefit. I think they'll come on the right.
There are a few people, like I said, there's a few people, they have a little bit of an audience, it's good stuff. It's just, it doesn't outweigh the bad so far.
Parting thoughts, Mehr and Seerat, quickly, and
I just think it comes down to firefighting and then continue to carry on to do work. You can spend all your time and resources in battling disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech. And I think it's I don't want to say that it's going to be a wasted effort, but I do feel that ultimately, if you continue to carry on producing good work, you can, in the long run, accomplish far more. I think I'm pretty much done with reactionary stuff and short-term solutions. Been there, done that, seen it, lived it, experienced it, and as they say in Punjabi, mat mari gayi aur bas bhi ho gayi hai. So I'm definitely in for the long haul. कि आप अपना काम करें, अच्छा काम करें, and it will pay off. Good luck to all the firefighters, all my duas.
Seerat.
Yeah, I think I will agree with Mehr. And again, yeah, I feel like all the work that so many incredible people are doing regarding educating people and regarding, fighting the good fight, fighting the narratives jo harmful hain. Continue the work that you're doing. I feel like at least there's some hope. And even like the cases that happened recently, I feel like the Quran, Nukta, so many other platforms, they provided us hope in the fact that acha nahi, there is a way of looking at things and there's a way of not believing everything that you see online. And I feel like the main cheez hai wo bas yahi hai कि people should not believe everything that they see online. Please अपनी search किया करें, please थोड़ा investigate किया करें, खुद भी थोड़ी सी effort कर लिया करें. इतना it goes a long way. So yeah, that's all I
just want to say कि please ये जो हम बातें करें ये please यकीन कर ले हम. Yes.
But thank you so much, guys.